Well, folks, I have to give my thoughts about the two-episode season premiere of Daredevil Born Again, because Netflix's original Daredevil series is easily one of my top 10 favorite TV/streaming series of all time ever. And I have to admit that I think these two episodes so far really capture the spirit of the original. With that said, I do think that I see why it garnered a few more negative reviews than I was expecting. First of all, that big shocking tragedy that happens in the first episode does happen really quickly, and I think a lot of folks found it jarring, but I get why they did it that way, because they had to establish how shocking it was to the other characters, and I think the writers just wanted to rip that Band-Aid off because that was sad. In fact, this might be my recency bias talking, but I think that this was, for me, possibly the saddest death in TV history ever. And I'm looking back in time, folks. There were some sad deaths in The Walking Dead, but those kind of all run together for me. There are notable ones for me in Orange is the New Black and in Death Note, but I think those made me a bit more angry than sad. And there's a really sad one in Attack on Titan, but it's just as triumphant as sad because that character goes out with the blaze of glory. But this was just sad. And that brings me to the second thing I think contributed to the more negative reviews than I was expecting, which is that, after the time skip, Matt stops being Daredevil. And yes, that normally would be very tedious, very cliche, because we've seen that in Spider-Man 2 and The Dark Knight Rises. But here it's understandable because he suffered that tragic loss. And I noticed that they do something different with it too, because they juxtapose him no longer being Daredevil with Wilson Fisk no longer being the Kingpin because he's gone legit and he's elected mayor. So there's that question with the tension between them, who's going to break new status quo first, especially because Fisk is just such a great villain, because he's so clearly a messed up person, but he does have a code, he does have a conscience, and I feel like a show that is less well written would just either make him look more sympathetic than he actually is, or they would just make him one-dimensionally sociopathic. But there is that nuance there, which is good because you can never really expect what he's going to do, and that's very suspenseful. That tense, snarky meeting between him and Matt in the restaurant was my favorite scene in episode 1. Episode 2, though, my favorite bit was probably just the whole thing with why Hector Ayala is arrested, because that brings up a good point about police brutality in a new, interesting way. The idea that, vigilantism is now illegal, but they're fishing out those who are breaking the law by beating up an innocent person, but the police should be protecting people. So that was a kind of not too subtle, but just interesting enough way that it was really thought-provoking. Speaking of things that weren't really subtle, though, Fisk's selection to mayor is clearly supposed to be mirroring another American election, but I'm glad they made that just clear enough but not too over the top, because if they went a little more over with that would have been kind of corny. But I like that they knew just the level to put it at. I think my only nitpick about these two episodes is that I don't like the intro as much as the original Netflix version. Just the music, though. I don't like the music as much. But the imagery with the crumbling statues reforming, that I did like. And I noticed that in the scene when Vanessa is talking with the crime lords, there's a statue in the background, so I'm thinking, maybe I should be looking for statues in the background now. All right, I've talked about this long enough. Those are my main thoughts. I might do another short video on the rest of the episodes. That's it. See you. Take care.